Hi and welcome to the Voices of Boyle podcast. This is episode 6 and today our guest is a man called Pat Murphy. Pat is, in his own words, a blow-in to Boyle. He's a native of Dundalk but has been living here in the town for the past 5 years. Pat is the biggest sailing enthusiast and the bulk of our chat today will focus around his trip around the world in a sailboat with his lovely wife Olivia. They set sail back in 1999 on what they thought would be a 4-year voyage, but it ended up taking them a total of 9 years. We're going to talk about that trip, some of the things he learned, the highs and the lows, and some of his stories from some of the countries that they visited. And then we're going to talk about Pat's life upon returning home. He went through a very dark period in his life, so we're going to talk about that, and we're going to talk about how he came out the other side and his life today. I feel like we have a lot to chat about, so let's get started. So welcome to the podcast, Pat. Thank you very much for joining us and taking time out of your day to share your story. So let's take things back to the very beginning, Pat. You were born in 1943 in Dundalk.
That's right.
Yep. You moved from Dundalk to Dublin in 1963 when you were just a young gossoon of 20 years old.
Yes, indeed.
You were doing a strong line, as you said in your own words.
In Dundalk
with a girl. And at the time you were leaving, your mother had one bit of advice for you. And what was that bit of advice?
She told me that's the girl to marry.
That's the girl to marry and watch the women in Dublin.
And watch the women in Dublin.
But a young gossoon at 20 years old, of course, lo and behold, you didn't take her advice, like most people wouldn't. And you hit off for a dance in Harcourt Street in the April of 1964. And this is where your life changed and you met Olivia for the first time. So tell us about that night, Pat, what you said to your friend in the bedsit when you got home, and tell us about the years that followed up to your marriage in 1967.
Yes, I went to the dance it was the 4 Ps in Harcourt Street in Dublin in 1964. And I met this lady. Now, I never drank. I was a teetotaler. Well, in those days, you couldn't get alcohol in a lot of dance halls anyway. And I met her and I asked her, could I leave her home? And she says, my daddy's collecting me. So that didn't sound too good. But we made a date anyway for a couple of nights later. And she rang me in work to say that she couldn't make it, that her grandmother died. Now, I said to myself, that's a bit of a coincidence.
This is an excuse.
Isn't it? A bit of an excuse. But it was a fact. And we had a further date on it, and it just developed from there on it. And we had a lovely, lovely courtship, I must say, on it. And we got married in 1967. And lucky enough, her daddy was big into boats. He had a garage in Dublin as well, but he was into boats, motorboats and that. And I was into boats as well, so that helped. And I got on very, very well with him because he liked boats and he liked somebody who was on boats and sailing and doing a lot of sailing on it. So we got on extremely well on it. And I popped a question to Olivia and of course she accepted. And we got married in Sutton in Dublin. And we went off on our honeymoon, skiing on our honeymoon. So we had a great time skiing on it. And that was the last time we went skiing then for about 11 years because the children came on the scene. So you couldn't go skiing with young kids and that. And then we went skiing 11 years later on a fairly regular basis. So we're fairly decent, accomplished skiers.
Brilliant.
Or we were, because I'm in my 80th year now. So if anybody's listening, if they make a note in their diary for the 26th of March next year, it's my 80th birthday.
Wow,
so,
Pat. Well, now in fairness to you, the sailing or the skiing, I'm not sure, but it kept you looking young anyway.
Yes, indeed. No,
yeah.
I can't complain now. Another just little diversion. I got a new knee in my left leg about 8 years ago. And as you know, the two knees are originally made from the same material. And yet the right knee is giving me trouble, and I'm having that new knee put in there on the 14th of October next month. So that's another date for people's diaries.
So you'll have two new
knees.
You'll be brand new.
Yeah.
Brand new. You might take up the skiing then with the new knees. Test them out.
I don't know.
So, Pat, you were both into sailing, which was great. Great start of a relationship, just when you have a hobby in common. So when did you start to take it seriously? Or was there a moment where you just thought, right, we need to hit off?
I was always very serious into dinghy sailing. Yeah. I was very competitive. I won quite a few national titles in Ireland, and I sailed in world championships in America and Australia. So I was very big into competitive dinghy sailing. And then I gave that up about 1986. I went into cruisers, and I did a bit of racing in cruisers as well, bigger boats. But then both our parents died of cancer, and Olivia's sister died of cancer at 52. And it's in the family on both sides. And because they left us a bit of money. And I said to Olivia one day, I said, Olivia, before this cancer hits us, I think we should do something now that we have a little bit of money. And she says, Pat, what would you like to do? And I said, I'd like us to sail around the world.
Wow.
And she answered to me and she said to me, I'm going up to Dunn's to get the weekly shopping. So that didn't sound good.
That was the response.
Yeah. But anyway, 4 years into planning, getting the right boat, because there's horses for courses and courses for horses. And we eventually bought one, having travelled everywhere, looking for one. We flew down to Mallorca to look at a particular boat that was for sale. And we stepped on it. And Olivia looked at me and I looked at her, no way, didn't like it at all. And we were walking around the yard in Mallorca. Now, we were staying with friends, so we didn't have that accommodation expense. And I saw a notice in the broker's window that this boat had just come on the market. So we said, can we have a look at that? It had come up from South Africa. So he said, yes. He brought us down, and it was on the hard, so I could see the profile underneath with the keel and the rudder and everything else, and I liked it, 3/4 length keel. And we stepped up onto the boat, and Olivia looked at me, I looked at her, end of search. The timber work on it was fantastic. Now, I was in the marine business then, and I remember once or twice when we were back on holidays during a big trip, I went over to the London Boat Show and I saw the brand new 41-foot boats all around the same size as our own, looking spectacular at the boat show in London. And I came out of them and I said, I much prefer our boat. So when you can come out of a boat show after looking at brand new boats and still much prefer your own, that's
There's a lot to be said.
Never ever. And I still have that boat in Howth in Dublin.
Wow. So it's still in Dublin Howth.
It's still in Dublin in Howth,
Fantastic.
yes. And still sailing it on it.
So, Pat, before we get into the bulk of the trip and the planning and the boat and the whole journey, tell us a little about your early days coming to Boyle in the 70s and 80s.
Oh, yes. Now, Boyle, I have a lot of association with Boyle going back in even the 60s, 70s and 80s, because in the 60s and 70s and 80s, I used to be travelling up to Ross's Point in Sligo quite a bit, and I'd be going through Boyle, and we've often stopped to have refreshments in Boyle. And then the bit I didn't like after Boyle was going up to the Curlew Pass. That wasn't a very nice one, especially towing a boat on a trailer.
It's bad enough without the boat.
Without the boat, yes. And that was long before the bypass or anything else on it. But so that's gone way right back to the 60s, 70s and 80s. And then I was very involved with Emerald Star, the charter boat people, and we used to have a boat every year. And many's a time we came up to Lough and on up the river. Now, there was no canal at that time, up the river. And we'd berth near the wooden bridge along the banks of the river and walk up into the town. And we could walk around the abbey, the abbey. There was no restrictions or anything else on it. It just went in and walked all around it. I remember that way back on it. So they were great times in Boyle. But now with the canal, it's very nice.
It's a fantastic
canal. And I know James Camden, who you had on recently, was very instrumental in organising that on it. So I want to thank James for doing that.
100%.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah. Great man for the town. He did.
Yeah, but
he's
even
done so
even
much.
in those days in Lockheed, there was no marina. There was just a harbour and a concrete wall on it. And we used to be up there quite a bit. And even we were able to walk from the shore of the lake right up through the tunnel, the servants' tunnel, because they couldn't go in the front door or anything else on it. Right up through the tunnel, up into the rooms of the house at the time on it. I remember it well. And our children always loved the bog gardens.
Yeah, it was a massive playground for children. Do you know, so much adventure.
Lovely. Yes, indeed. And another thing about Boyle that I like now too, because I'm here now 5 years with my partner Geraldine. The pleasure gardens, lovely place to walk around there on it. And recently when it's all been done up, and I can't wait to see how the old Royal Hotel is finished off. They're doing great work on it now.
It's coming on.
It's coming on well, yeah, I can see that on it. And the flower beds all around the place here, the crescent and that is lovely on it. And I love the St. Patrick's Day parades here. They're lovely. And of course, the one that I enjoy well too is the tractor rally at Christmas time.
The Christmas lights.
The Christmas lights and all that on it, yeah.
You wouldn't see that above in Dublin too often,
No,
Pat.
not too often, no. And then, of course, you have everything's convenient for us in Boyle. Lovely shops. The station is nice. The bus service is quite good there from the Abbey area and from King's House, rather. And then it's convenient on it. And, of course, one place I think we're very fond of is Doon Shore.
Yeah, it's
Doon
lovely.
Shore is lovely. And now they're doing a lot of work there. And well done. I look forward to see the whole thing being finished on it.
Yeah, the Doon Shore is a great place because the water's low as well, so young kids can go in there swimming, and that's
right,
where a lot of the kids would have spent their days down there swimming during the hot summers.
Unfortunately, every time we go down there, we forgot to take our swimming gear.
Yeah, no, it is lovely. So put that on your list. When you get the new knee, that's going to be your first stop.
Definitely.
Off the pier.
Well,
Jump off the pier.
I swim regularly in Ireland. Regularly in Ireland, I tell you, but regularly on a Christmas morning in a boat for the lifeboat. I've been at it now for 40 years on it every Christmas morning. So I swim regularly, but only on Christmas morning.
You'll have to add more of it into your routine. So that's great, Pat. That's great to hear your connections from to Boyle, because obviously, as you said, you've been living here the last 5 years. But to know that you've been here in the 60s, 70s and 80s, you've been tied to the town for quite a while.
Yes,
so it's
indeed,
nice.
indeed,
it's full circle that you've kind of come back. So that's lovely.
Yeah.
So let's get on to the main adventure of your life that took you the whole way around the world.
Ooh.
Yeah. So the motivation for the trip, Pat, was obviously the cancer in your family.
Yes,
you wanted to do something
while we had a bit of
while
money.
you had a bit of money, a bit of your health, and just enjoy life.
Yes,
yeah.
indeed.
So that was the motivation for the trip. Yeah. How long did it take? You were telling us there about getting the boat. How long did it take for the planning of the trip in terms of the route planning, the logistics? Did you need back then like licenses or visas, or was it, what was the planning like?
Well, from the idea came into my mind, and I mentioned to Olivia, we were 4 years in the planning, getting the right boat and everything else. And as I said earlier, the boat we bought was down in Mallorca, and we sailed it back to Ireland, the two of us, and that was in 98. Did work on it over the winter time, and we set off in 99. In fact, the plan was to set off at 4 o'clock one Sunday, and we didn't get away till 4:05. Imagine we were 5 minutes late.
You didn't do too bad now, in fairness.
And I remember VHI were going global. They were advertising that they were going global. It wasn't just Ireland now, they were going global. And I put in a proposition to them, you're going global and we're going global. And they actually sponsored us with the health for 4 or 5 years, right? Which was great, because we told them we were going for 4 years, so they said to do it. And they organised a big party for us in a Haute Yacht Club before we left. We got a great send-off.
Fantastic.
And I don't know why we got such a great send-off. I think it might have been because they wanted to get rid of us.
Not at all.
And I remember we went down to Wicklow was our first stop. And we went up to get fish and chips in Wicklow. And the girl behind the counter says, "Oh, I saw you on the news tonight." because RTE were out and filmed us leaving, because I have connections there as well on it. So, yeah, we set off and made our way down to Plymouth in the south of England, had a water maker fitted there. We were able to produce about 45 litres of fresh water from seawater, which was grand. And then we made our way across to France, down to Portugal, and then across out to Madeira. And Olivia wasn't big into sailing now. And
wow.
I have a photograph of her on her way out to Madeira, steering the boat, and she looks terrified. She was.
Did she get seasick, or was it just...
I think in the whole trip we only got seasick probably about 3 or 4 times on it. But when Olivia would get sick over one side, I always supported her and got sick the other side, so she didn't feel so bad.
She wasn't alone. That's a true marriage.
No, it was good. And the plan was 4 years. And whether you consider this good planning or bad planning, we managed to stretch it to over 9 years.
Good planning on your behalf in terms of you drew it out for as long as you could.
And I tell people that we only went as far as New Zealand. Now, you can't go much further on it. And but we crossed the Atlantic from the Canaries with a rally. It's the ARC rally, the Atlantic Rally for Cruisers. It goes off every year. In November, and we crossed with that. There was over 300 boats on it, and I was very involved in organising one group of them. They were broken into groups, and at the prize giving when we got over to St Lucia, over in St Lucia, they had a big prize giving, and all the prizes laid out in a big table for the fastest boat, this class, that class, and everything else on it. And we were just sitting there because of the 300 boats, we probably finished about 190th, because we were only slowly cruising. We weren't racing or anything else on it. But there was one prize left, a big salver. And they said, now we're going to come to this top prize of the whole rally. It's the Spirit of the Ark Award of the rally. The spirit for the boat and crew that contribute most to the atmosphere of the whole rally. And by unanimous acclaim, the winners of it is Pat and Olivia on Aldebaran, the name of a boat. I'm not often speechless, but I was speechless that time on it. And we went up and received this lovely award. We were the first Irish boat in the whole history of the rally to receive it.
Fantastic.
So
fantastic.
That was a great
That's
award.
a highlight.
That was a highlight.
Yeah.
And we spent 15 months sailing up and down the Caribbean, the US Virgin Islands and British Virgin Islands. Montserrat now was a very interesting place. It's called the Emerald Isle on it because that's where Irish people settled. And they were actually slavers as well over there at the time in Montserrat. And they had a big volcano just before a couple of years before we arrived on it. And the whole southern part of the island was devastated completely on it. And we got a tour around it and all that on it. But when we were going in, and we had to check in with customs, the girl behind it, a nice coloured lady on it, she's looking at Olivia's passport. And she nudges her friend beside her, another coloured lady. And Olivia's maiden name was Sweeney. And that girl's name was Sweeney, originating from the Irish on it.
Wow.
So that was just a bit of a coincidence on it.
Wow.
But we've had a great time. And then down into Trinidad, and we fitted great stories in Trinidad. And we fitted a lot of security stuff and the hatches and everything else for going across South America, Venezuela and that on it. And then we crossed to Venezuela, and we got advice to buy some mace spray to carry with you on the streets and that, because it's very dangerous there on it. And we went up, we got directions on this island as to where to go up the street, take the second to the left, the fourth door on the right, and we knocked on this big metal door, and you could hear the bolts opening from the far side. They opened the door, and they said yes. I said, we're looking to get some mace spray. Come on up. And they brought us up, and I could have bought anything there, machine guns, AK-47s, you name it, all there on it. And all we wanted was a couple of mace sprays. And those mace sprays we carried with us. We had beside us in the bed and everything else on it in case we got attacked or anything else.
And you didn't have to use them?
Never had to use them. Never had to use them.
God.
I was going to use them on Olivia once or twice, but
We'll
she
come
was
to
going to
that.
use them on me.
We'll come to that. So, Pat, talk to us about the logistics of the journey in terms of your day-to-day routine. Like, I don't understand much about sailing myself, so if you could just give us a little insight into, okay, you get up in the morning and things like that. What was the day-to-day like?
Crossing the Atlantic, it was 22 days. Now, we had two friends flew out to the Canaries and joined us, and then they left us when we got to the far side. So that was grand because, as I said earlier on, Olivia wasn't big into sailing. But when we eventually got through the Panama Canal out to the Galapagos Islands and we were across the Pacific, we had 23 days on our own, just the two of us.
It's a long time.
A long time at sea on it. And we tried shifts of 2 hours and 4 hours and everything else, and 2 hours was too short, 4 hours was too long. So we settled on 3 hour shifts, and we did that right through the night, the same time, every time on it, and rested every 3 hours. I mean, you get into the routine.
Physically and mentally, it must have been tough at times, though.
At times it's tough.
Yeah.
I mean, if you wanted to play a joke, you say, I spy. I spy with my little eye something beginning with S. Now, it's either sea or sky because there's nothing else. You don't see ships. I think in the whole 23 days we saw 2 ships. And you don't see wildlife, birds or anything else. It's too far out.
Wow.
But,
and then, of course, you have the challenge of always obviously going in the right direction. So I'm sure that there's challenges with that too.
We were lucky enough we had the GPS at that time, but we had a sextant with us as well. So if my power went down and I wasn't able to get power or anything else, I could use the sextant and take sights from the stars and the moon and all that on it, right? And the sun. And I could do that because I sorted that out before I left. And also, before we left, we both did first aid courses. Olivia's an advanced first aider. I got lessons on stitching, how to stitch people up and all that.
Wow.
And we had stilts with us, splints with us, yeah, the whole lot. And we even had a body bag aboard with weights, so that if somebody died, you could have to bury them at sea, because in the middle of the Pacific, you can't hold on to a body.
Wow.
You have to dispose
and was that
of it.
not a little bit scary? Like, obviously you were being prepared for
we were being prepared for everything on it, you know. And we both took a diving courses in St. Lucia, and I'm an advanced diver, so we had all our diving equipment, bottles and everything else on it. And that worked out very well, because at times, now and again, your anchor would get caught down in rocks or something else, or reefs, and we were able to go down and free the anchor and things like that on it. But not only that, but to go down under the sea and to be swimming with sharks and whales and everything else and wildlife down under the sea is unbelievable.
Amazing. And nobody else around.
Nobody else around you.
Unbelievable. And Pat, what was, do you think, the most difficult thing about being on board? In terms of, was it obviously you weren't lonely, Olivia was there, but was it the lack of interaction with other people? Was it the constant movement? Was it the shift work? Like, what was the most difficult thing about the journey for you?
There was always little jobs to do. Always little jobs to do, and you had to keep on top of them.
You were never fully switched off.
Never fully switched. You were always thinking ahead as well on it. And when we'd arrive in a port somewhere, I'd have a list done out already, prepared. Jobs with P on them, their priority, and then other jobs on it. But that's life, and you come to accept it. And the camaraderie with other boats. Now, you don't see them all the time, but you do come across them. Now, again, the camaraderie with them is unbelievable. If you have a problem, they'll come and they'll help you on it. Now, we had a big problem in Nui. Going into Nui, I was on the radio. We had a single sideband radio. We were able to communicate the radio all around the world, right? And that was costing us $100 a year or something like that on it. We weren't using satellites or anything else, and didn't have them at the time. But this woman said she needs help. Her husband is after getting very sick, and we're in the middle of nowhere. And she asked me to get help, and I had to coordinate a rescue with other boats that I knew were not too far away from her. And they went to her, and one of them went and got aboard, and they guided her into Nui. And we had doctors and all organised on boats. As soon as the boat came in, they were able to get him off and get him to hospital. So, but everybody helped everybody. And there were some very, very sad stories. But there are sad stories on land
Yes.
as well as at sea.
Yes, I think in a situation like that where you're a smaller community, there's that instant connection.
Everybody.
Yeah, I notice even now, just kind of off topic a little bit, we have a camper van, you know, and it's a community, because no matter where you are in the country, you'll just have a big wave for each other. So I
Yes,
can imagine when
yes.
you're out in the middle of nowhere at sea, that's magnified.
Or if you happen to see a ship,
Yeah.
they'll call you up and you'll have a chat with them and everything else on it. Which
Like,
is
hi,
great.
neighbour.
Yeah.
Yeah, amazing.
Where are you going and all this? So it's good on it, yeah. No,
So, and
great
then
stories.
in contrast, Pat, that the most difficult thing was obviously the little jobs. And if you could pick one thing about the best thing about being on board from a day-to-day perspective, what would that be?
The best thing is every morning when the sun rises and the sun is behind you, because you're going west all the time on it. But to see that sun rising in the morning and there's nothing else there, just the sunrise coming on it, is fantastic. And then moving on down to the end of the day, to see it setting ahead of you in the west, because we're heading west on it, rises in the east and setting in the west on it. That's unbelievable, and there's nothing to obstruct it. So we've seen more sunrises and more sunsets
Amazing.
than any of you have ever seen.
Amazing, amazing.
Yeah.
And Pat, obviously the journey took you the 9 years in total. And through that time, you visited 36 countries,
That's right.
if I'm correct, yeah. And your route took you from Ireland all the way around the world. Talk to us about some of the places that you sailed through, some of the countries you visited. And is there one place that sticks out in your mind for any reason?
The one that sticks is going through the Panama Canal was a great experience, because normally the yachts maybe go through in one day. But the pilot that we got, is, I forget what it cost us. It cost about $200 to go through or something else on it, right? But bearing in mind, if you had to go around to South America, it would cost you a lot more on it.
A lot more.
There. So, and we got very friendly with an English boat, Malcolm and Helen on Muna. And we were going through the canal together, the two boats, and the pilots came to us in this particular morning. We were waiting for a while to get the pilot. It all had to be, we had to be measured and pay up and everything else on it. But eventually, when they came to take us through, we had to go through 3 locks going up to the top, right? And normally, as I say, boats would go through in the one day down the 3 the far side, but they stopped us in the middle. Our pilots wanted to get off. So we anchored in Gatton Lake in the middle of the Suez Canal. It was great because we were able to anchor and watch the ships going up and down and absorb the whole atmosphere of the canal.
And you were just stuck in the middle?
We were stuck in the middle.
For how long?
Overnight.
Wow.
Overnight on it. But it was very warm and we all went in for a swim. Now, on the boat, you have to have a minimum of 5 people on the boat. You have the pilot that's supplied to you. You have the skipper, which was me, and you have to have a crew member at each corner of the boat for throwing the lines and catching the lines going through the locks. So how do you do that? You get some of the other yachts that are coming behind you will help you to go through. Now, we went through the canal 3 times, twice as line handlers for other boats. And then we take the bus back. It's only 50 miles, so it's not that far, you know. So we went through, and when you're going through the first or second time on, you're not too worried because you're on somebody else's boat. You're not worried about it. But you get to know the routine and the problems with it, right?
And then when your turn comes.
Yeah, we're much more aware of it.
Yes.
But when we went through this time, the 2 occasions that we went through as line handlers, I went through in one day. So when we were going through and we were stopped in the middle overnight and we anchored there and we all went for a swim, our line handlers on both boats and everything else. And it was a lovely day, and we were just come out of the water, and what swam right behind us? Only a big crocodile.
No way.
Yes. And we told the pilot the next day, there's a crocodile in there. He says there's hundreds of them in there. You shouldn't have gone in there. Why the hell didn't you tell us that before you left us last night on it? So we were kind of lucky.
Oh my goodness. So it was full of crocodiles and you in swimming.
Full of crocodiles in Gatton Lake, yeah.
Oh, wow.
But just going down going down through the 3 locks, and to see the last one open to the Pacific Ocean. Now you've now gone from the Atlantic Ocean, and now you're going to. This gate is opening in the lock slowly, and there in front of you is the Pacific Ocean that you're going into now. That was a great experience on it.
Amazing memories. Jeez.
And when we went through, we anchored up near Panama, Balboa. Excuse me. And we went into Panama, and we were shot at in Panama. And I said to Malcolm, look, we're going to have to buy something and defend ourselves. So each of us bought a weapon. I bought a multi-purpose water pistol, and Malcolm bought another water pistol as well. And we were being shot with water pistols. There was a festival, right? And people say, turn around and bang, shoot you with water and everything else. And there was ammunition along the street, buckets of water. You just went down and you fill your gun up with the water on it. A great atmosphere. And when I do a lot of talks, and I do it in talks, and I tell about being shot at and everything else, and build it up, and then explain about the water pistols, you know. But then we went out. I think it was 5 or 6 days out to the Galapagos Islands. Well worth it. If anybody.
I haven't been, but I've heard about them. Yeah.
And we were able to go through each of them. We weren't there on a chartered boat. We weren't there as a tourist. You know, well, we were a tourist, but we didn't fly in. We had our own transport, we had our own accommodation and everything else on it. But we were treated very well on it. And there was one particular island. Some of the charter people said, don't you go onto that island there, the charter boat people, because you haven't got a permit for it. And this was called an island with a bay called Post Office Bay. And they left late that evening. And then early the next morning, I said to Malcolm, I went over to Malcolm in the dinghy. I said, Malcolm, come on, we're going ashore to this Post Office Bay. So he was nervous. We went ashore anyway. And there's post boxes, barrels there, that the old sailing ships used to leave mail in it for going from west to east. They'd leave post there for a boat that was going back to England or something else, or vice versa on it. And I posted 2 postcards in it, right? I said, they'll never get home. And within a week, the 2 of them were delivered. One to my own family and one to a friend of mine, the late Neville Maguire. And he nearly killed me because the local newspaper got wind of it. This guy that brought it over, he was over on a fundraising for the hospital, and he brought these cards. His wife had seen the cards. She was from New York, and she'd seen them in the box and brought them back to New York with him. He was coming to Ireland to do a fundraising for that Beaumont Hospital, and he got the local newspaper, took him down to Neville Maguire as he was handing him the postcard. And the paper was postcard from the Galapagos, and Neville's the photograph and everything else, and the paper and all on. And that was a great story.
That's amazing. So there were still, everyone was obviously aware what they were used for, and they were kind of helping each other out.
We went through, but there was none from where we were going to, you know. And so that was a great story on it. And then we set off 23 days across the Pacific. And I remember before we left the Galapagos, we had to get supplies and everything else on it. And we bought 2 dozen eggs for the journey, the whole lot, right? And we were 2 days out, and Olivia cracked one of the eggs and it was gone off. All the eggs were gone off. Now, there was no way where we were going to go back 2 days to complain about the eggs on it. And I'd say all the islands in the Galapagos, bring them all to this place where people leave from. Because once they're gone, but
there's no complaint.
There's no complaint. Nobody's going to come back on it. And we eventually made our way across the Pacific and did all the islands in the Pacific on it. Great stories. And then Tonga down to New Zealand. We got a bad storm going from Tonga down to New Zealand. We knew it was coming. We were warned 2 days beforehand that it was coming, but we're in the middle of the ocean with days to go and we couldn't go anywhere. And we just battened everything down, battened the hatches down, got our life raft ready, got everything ready, made sure we were all right. And the day before, the whole ocean was like a mill pond, nothing. And then the wind came in and hammered us for about 36, 40 hours on it. Really, really. And we couldn't sleep or anything else. And we were lying on the floor in our life jackets and everything else on it.
You're just at the mercy of the
Just
ocean.
at the mercy of
And
the
at
ocean,
any
yeah.
stage, Pat, did you feel...
No, I was fairly confident with the boat. You know, we put up very small sails just to keep us going on it. And then the storm went over and we ended up motoring a bit into New Zealand on it. And the idea was to just spend a couple of months in New Zealand. We actually spent 15 months in New Zealand. I was working there in a boatyard, naughty boy, Pat. But thoroughly loved New Zealand, loved the people and everything else on it. And eventually when we left New Zealand and came up through the Barrier Reef, New Zealand, and we come up then into Fiji, had a great time in Fiji. And then our favourite, most memorable country is Vanuatu. It used to be called the New Hebrides.
Right, okay.
And we went there and there was a festival on and all native people on it. And we went to this festival. It was a 3-day festival. And I got very friendly with some of the people the natives that were participating in it. And this chief that organised it, he didn't have enough people in his tribe, and he invited another tribe up from further down the island to come and help him. And this hours they spent walking up through the jungle. There's no roads or anything else, up through the jungle to his village to help him to run this festival. And he didn't look after them very well. And I got to know this other tribe that came up. I got to know the chief very, very well. And I said, why don't you organise your own festival next year? He says, we've never done a festival. I said, well, I'll help you to organise it next year. Because we then had to leave Vanuatu and go to Australia for the cyclone season. And then I said, we'll come back out again. This will be the first time we'll have backtracked on a travel. But the following, when we were in Australia, Olivia spent the whole cyclone season collecting clothes and pens and pencils and all to go bring back out to the people because they had nothing. So we went back out and we helped them to organise a festival, and they organised it for 5 days.
Fantastic.
Absolutely fine. And there was a big ceremony, a pig killing ceremony, where they kill a pig and the chief's family are invited up to be blooded with the pig blood. And now we had... the first festival we were at, there was 15 boats, and I got nearly 30 boats at the second time because they did a lot of advertising on the radio and everything else for it. We had a great turnout on it. And they were all there at this pig killing ceremony. And the chief's son came up to me and pulled me out of the rest of the white people and brought me up to be blooded with the pig blood.
That was a big honour.
I was blooded with the pig blood, and I was very, very honoured. Sorry, I'm getting very emotional.
Oh, no, you're okay. It meant a lot.
Lovely, lovely, lovely to be blooded.
Yeah.
And we have a bit of a video of it as well on it, so it was great. And then of course, back to Australia for the second cyclone season on it.
Oh, and that meant, I'm sure there are people, Pat, in that tribe that are still talking about you.
Yeah, so we're still in contact with them.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And just
Sorry, I'm getting emotional.
No, you're okay. They're great memories. My God. And, you know, I suppose we live in this world where there's so much to look at, so many things going on. We take things less for granted or for granted more. But the people like them, they're probably still talking about it.
Oh, yeah.
You know.
So nice people. We helped them as much as we could with everything, and they were so kind to us, and they had very little on it, you know.
And just out of interest, Pat, did the tribe from the other part of the island, did they go down for the festival?
No, I didn't.
No,
didn't, actually, no. No. But and I went for a big walk across to a town across the island with some of the chief's people, and I remember we met a lady. And she had a couple of children, but one of them was white, an albino, right? And I said, oh, an albino. Yes, we think she had a white man. They thought that she had had an affair with a white man, and that's why she had a white baby.
Right.
Not realising the albino, right, on it. So that was just an...
And did you educate them, or did they... Well, suppose they had no clue.
No. And there's great stories about such a family with an albino going to a big festival, and they dressed themselves up as snakes, black and white. So the kids and all for the big festival on it. and it's a snake dance. We've seen it being performed and everything else on it. So people wouldn't, the albino child wouldn't stand out, being painted black and white with the stripes on it, you know.
Because everyone was the same.
Everybody was the same on it. The whole family were the same on it. So great stories on it, you know, the whole lot. And then from Brisbane in Australia, that's where we were staying. We were staying with friends, had a pontoon there. Didn't cost us anything, which was great. A man we met from Dublin in Australia, he was living out in Australia, and we told him we were making our way to Australia, and he says, oh, our daughter lives in Australia and she has a pontoon. So we got in contact and we went in to this place, and it was like going up a street. Take the first turn on the right, the second turn on the left, and there's a house on the right hand side. A canal system, the whole lot up. And we spent the whole time there on. So
you had a great time there, and you stayed in Australia for
15 months.
15 months. So you got to see a good bit of it back then
as well. Yeah, and then came up the Barrier Reef, up into the Barrier Reef, all the islands to Darwin, and did a bit of touring in the Northern Territory. Stories there as well on it, and from there we moved up north into Indonesia. Right, and had a great tour of Indonesia, saw the orangutans and everything else on it. Really, really great. And Bali, went to Bali, had a great time in Bali, and eventually made our way up to Singapore. And we tried the Singapore sling, this famous drink there on it, yeah. And I can recommend it. And up into Malaysia, Thailand. Great stories on it, and then across to Sri Lanka, and that's where the Tamil tigers were in operating, but I think they've stopped now. They've cut them all on it. And when we were approaching it, the particular harbour we had to go into, we had to anchor outside, and the authorities came out in a gunboat with guns all over the place on it, searched our boat, checked to make sure we had everything, we weren't opposing anything, and then they opened a barrier on the harbour, and we went in, and then they closed the barrier behind because they didn't want the Tamil tigers coming in and sabotaging the boats or anything else on it.
Yes.
So these are all stories.
Wow.
And then from there we went to India, Cochin in India, got very friendly with people there, and we were invited to a wedding there. And this man's daughter, she was nursing in Dublin, and the husband, and we were invited to the wedding, and it really was a fantastic experience on it. We had a big meal in the bride's house the night before the wedding, and then brought to the wedding and everything else on it. And after the wedding there was a lovely big meal, and all the tables were laid out, and people were all the food was being put out on leaves, big leaves, right, leaves, and they came down to us with knives and forks. Now everybody else was eating with the fingers. And I said, no, thank you. There's no way are we going to sit with a knife and fork when everybody else is using their fingers. So we just use our fingers exactly the same as everybody else.
Fit in. We actually had a similar experience. We were in India, and we went to this guy's house, and like that too, they'd prepared a big meal. But it was obviously like a curry, and there was yogurt in it, and it was very saucy. So obviously what they do is they make the balls with the rice, and they eat it with their fingers. But again, they were giving us knives and forks, and we said, no, we'll eat the way you're eating. Well, you want to see the mess.
Well, we had great stories on it.
Yeah.
And then from there, India, we had to go across, we went to Sudan. And then from Sudan, we had a lovely time in Sudan, met some very nice Arabs there. And then we had to go through the Gulf of Aden, which is renowned for pirates and everything else on it. And I organised a flotilla of 5 boats. And we had waypoints laid out, and we called them A, B, C, D. And when we were talking the radio to each other, we were able to say, I'm so many miles from B or so many miles from A. But the pirates listening, they wouldn't know where A and B were. Only ourselves knew it. And we called ourselves the Camel Convoy. So when we'd be on the radio in the mornings talking to each other, we called ourselves the Camel Convoy, in the hope that the pirates would look for us in the desert and not at sea.
Smart.
That's how we did that, yeah.
Smart. And did you pass?
Once or twice, fast boats came out to us, and we said, "Uh-oh!" But they were ordinary fishermen that come out looking for provisions, and we give them biscuits and Coke and a bit of alcohol and that on, and they gave us fish and everything else on it. A couple of lovely experiences, not what we expected on it. And then we got into Port Said, I think it was, and had a great time there as well. And then up through the Suez Canal, of course. Great time in the Suez Canal, up the Red Sea to the Suez Canal. And I was glad to get out of the Red Sea, because the people in Egypt, they were looking for backhanders all the time.
Really?
In the Suez Canal, yeah. We had the Suez Canal, you go into Suez and you get a pilot, he takes you up halfway and he leaves you there, right? And from there, we did tours around Cairo, and we did the pyramids and everything else, and down to the Valley of the Kings and all that. So it was grand. And then you get another pilot that takes you from the Midway up to Port Said and out into the Mediterranean on it. And they're looking for backhanders everywhere, the whole lot on it. And I have a lovely photograph of coming out of the Suez Canal with a cup. Now, it wasn't water, it was a bit more alcohol and stuff, celebrating getting out of the Suez Canal.
Happy to be gone.
Happy to be out of it.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we did the Mediterranean.
And you're on the home stretch then.
On the home stretch.
Yeah.
And when we were coming back into Mallorca, this would make us circumnavigators, because that's where we bought the boat. We left from there on it. And I got a boat that was sailing around the place, I don't know who he was, to take some photographs of us going in with Mallorca in the background. So we have photographs of us actually completing a circumnavigation on it.
Fantastic.
Which was great on it.
Fantastic.
And then, of course, when we got back up into Ireland, then we got a great reception as well in a host and everywhere else on it.
Fantastic, so Pat. Some great memories there. So I had planned, obviously, to talk about some hiccups, but you've kind of went through everything I had on my list. We had the crocodiles.
Oh, yes.
We had the storm and Pirate Alley, all about the pirates. But I suppose one thing I want to touch on is just the challenges of being together as a couple on board, and the reason why I ask is because myself and Carlo, we did a motorbike trip in Vietnam, and it was just the two of us over a month on the bike, and much like the boat, it involved navigation and all these challenges, and we killed each other on it, and we had to make up a rule about 3 days in to say, right, 3 days is all it took. Whatever happens on the bike stays on the bike, so you can't take it off the bike. And so what was it like in terms of when you had a little row over something, could be very minute? How did you deal with that?
Well, just before I go into that, we actually did some backpacking in Vietnam and Cambodia while we were there as well.
Okay.
So we had a great experience there. But as far as rows were concerned on it, we did have, you mightn't talk to each other for a day maybe or something on it, But when I'm giving talks now, people say, now, the most frequently asked question is, people say, what happens when you have a row in the middle of the Pacific Ocean? And I said, well, now, I'll check your intelligence, because I was giving a talk last week in Dublin, and they weren't very intelligent. But you people in Boyle, I know you're much more intelligent, so we'll see will you come up with the answer. What do you think happens when we have a row at boat? And people start throwing up questions and everything else. And I said, well, hold on, and I'll show you. And the next slide that comes up shows Olivia at the very top of the mast on the boat. And she's saying, I'm not coming down till you say sorry. And then you have a bubble at the bottom saying, you have no chance, Oh. And then I tell people, she stayed up there for about 18 hours. And when she came down, she was exhausted, she was. And I had to put her to bed. So the next slide shows her on the bunk, fast asleep. It's just a bit of, to break up a talk. So I've been giving people talks. I don't go into technical sailing things for the ordinary people. Or I tell stories and that on it, which makes it a bit more interesting on it. But that goes down very well with it,
So that's how you deal with them. Great advice. And so, Pat, you finished in 2008.
Yes.
And that was it. Massive accomplishment. How did it feel docking the boat for the last time on that journey? How did it feel?
And the reception we had with people coming in. Because once we got back in, we left Ireland originally from Kilmore Quay in Wexford. I love Kilmore Quay in Wexford, right? And that's where we left from. And then we came back up, a great reception in Kilmore Quay, back to Arklow, Dunleary and into Louth. And we had cannons firing when we were the guns firing when we were going into Louth. Great reception on it. And a whole lot of boats came out and escorted us in.
Amazing.
And we got a great reception on it, you know.
So you were definitely relieved.
Definitely relieved on it, yes.
And proud of yourselves, no
proud
doubt.
that we had done it. We were the first couple from the Louth Yacht Club over 100 years that had sailed around the world in their own boat from Louth back to Louth.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
No, it was
and you had good celebrations, I'd say.
We had good celebrations on it, yes.
And looking back, Pat, would there be anything you would have done differently about the trip? No, I don't think so. But I tell people the story is that of the 36 countries we were in, we were welcomed everywhere. And somebody asks me then, what's the nicest place you've been to? And I'd say, well, if we were to go round again, there's no place we've been to that we would avoid except one. What? Which one, Pat? Dunmore East in Waterford. Why, Pat? Why? Well, we were coming across the Bay of Biscay and the weather was very bad. We really had a bad time coming across. And we wanted to go into Kilmore Quay because that's where we started from. But you would have to go around the Salty Islands. And it's very dangerous going around the islands. And I didn't want to go around the world and come back to Ireland and wreck the boat on the shore. And the Coast Guards told us, don't try it, but go into Dunmore East, the harbour. And, you know, there's a rule that any harbour in a storm you're entitled to go into. So we went into Dunmore East, tied up about 6 in the morning, or 6:30 in the morning on it. And a couple of hours later, the harbour master came down. And anything like the abuse he gave us, you have no right to come in here. This is not a marina. You have no right to come in here. And we were coming out of a storm. And we walked on to another fishing boat beside us. And I heard him saying, they think it's a Nephilim marina. I don't want to use the word on it. Wow.
Terrible. After being around the world and welcomed everywhere, we come back into our own country and we get that abuse. Now, he was very fond of the gargle and he's now gone, right? And when I go in there now with the new harbour master on it, I'm welcomed with open arms because to make up for it. But everybody knows that now.
That's shocking.
That was sad.
Yeah, sad.
That was sad on it, you know.
Yeah, and a bit disappointed, I'm sure, after, as you said, going the whole way around the world and
then
coming home.
Go back to your own country and get that abuse on it, you know.
But the people in Louth made up for it.
Oh, yeah. The whole way, everywhere else.
Yeah, everywhere else.
And even my own place, Carlingford. We went up to Carlingford then and got a great reception there. Because that's my area is Carlingford area, you know.
That's home.
And the Cooley Mountains.
Fantastic.
Cuchulainn territory.
So, Pat, obviously, in more ways than you can probably even think of, that trip must have changed your lives.
It did.
Is there any one particular thing that changed about you after the trip? Did you have like a different perspective on life?
Well, I knew there was a lot more out there in life. And the people that were out there were just trying to survive the same as the rest of us on it. And I think that was a great lesson. I was able to look at coloured people. Now, this is awful. Completely different, just ordinary people the same as ourselves. And it was a great experience. And I don't want to go back into it, but being brought into a tribe with pig blooding, it was a great, great honour on it. And never, ever forget that.
Fantastic.
It, you know? Yeah.
And I know you touched on it, but can you tell us a little bit more about where the boat is now?
The boat is in Louth now.
In Louth.
In Louth, yes.
Inside, or is it
in the marina?
In the marina.
Underwater.
So she's still going.
Even this year, we had a great time down the Isles of Scilly. But do you want to go on? Tell me. I'll tell you what happened a few years after we came back.
Yeah, go on.
Right. The reason we went off initially was to avoid the cancer hitting us.
Yes.
Right. And we were only back a couple of years.
Yes.
In 2015. And in March 2015, Olivia was diagnosed with cancer, which we were worried about from the beginning. And she died in the August. Now, also, that time we decided we'd write a book. And we had the book finished in August. And we were hoping to have it published for the following Christmas of 2015. And we had it dedicated to our parents because that's who gave us the money to allow us to do this on it. And because we had that finished in August. Olivia was diagnosed in in March. We finished the book in March. She was diagnosed in March and she died in August. And that changed the whole perspective on it.
So the book, did she sign off on it? So was it completed by the time she passed
completed,
away?
Yes, because it was completed in the March as she was diagnosed with cancer on it. And I had it dedicated to our parents. And then I have it now changed inside cover, dedicated to my wife, Olivia. And but I haven't had the courage to actually print it.
Someday, Pat.
Someday, hopefully.
Someday you will. She was only 70 years old when she died.
That's right, yes, indeed, on it, yeah. I went through a very, very rough time. I nearly did away with myself to be with her, but I don't believe in hereafter or anything else on it. I went through a very, very rough time. And you've probably heard about Meals on Wheels. People said to me, Pat, how are you managing for food? Because I'm not a great cook. And I said, have you ever heard of Meals on Wheels? Oh, yes. I said, have you ever heard of Meals on Feet? No. What's Meals on Feet? Well, that's when your son and his family live next door to you. And your other son and his family live next door to him. And now you know what Meals on Feet are, when they walk in with the food for me, But a year and a half after Olivia died, I was in a bad way. And a chap said to me, why don't you go out and socialise, Pat? I said, no, I don't socialise or anything else on it. And he says, why don't you go on a dating site? At 74 years of age going on a dating site, you're joking. I did. And I met a couple of nice ladies. And I'm with a lady now who lives in Boyle.
Yes.
That's what has me up here for over 5 years now. And she got on great.
And her name is Geraldine.
Geraldine.
Yes.
She's originally from England, but she's been in Ireland now since the 90s, in Boyle and that on it, long time area. And she was never on a sailing boat in her life. And she's already sailed with me 3 times down to the Isles of Scilly and to Cornwall, Padstow and Cornwall, and up to Belfast and Bangor and West Cork. And then over 2.5 years ago, she got a bad virus. And there's no vaccine for it, none whatsoever. She bought a boat on the Shannon. And I know there's no vaccine for the boat virus because I've had it for over 70 years on it.
There's no going back.
There's no going back. So we have her boat here, and she keeps it in Carrick-on-Shannon. And at the moment it's in Boyle Harbour.
Wow.
So I can't get much closer than that. And she's originally from Yorkshire. And the person from Yorkshire is called a tyke, Tyke. Now, we call them different here in Ireland. So she called her boat Tyke. So if you see the wee small 24-foot boat called Tyke, it's Geraldine and myself on it.
That's Geraldine's.
Yes, Geraldine. But I can't understand whatever she's using in the washing machine. I don't know what kind of powder she's using, but it's shrinking the waistbands on my trousers. Now, I don't know how that's happening on it. So, it's life now is quite good on it. But I went through a very, very rough time on it. And after Olivia died, I got a lot of help from the hospice people because I was in a bad way. And everybody helped me. But then I joined a group called Target for 6 weeks, a morning a week for 6 weeks up in Dublin. And there were 7 of us or so, all bereaved, sitting together. And we had 3 facilitators with us. And this other girl lost her husband, somebody else lost her son, somebody else lost that. And I found that was so, so beneficial to me because I knew then I wasn't the only one that was going through a bereavement. And it ended up that I'd give them advice and they were giving me advice on it. And that's what saved me the whole lot. That with 7 of us or so all together talking about our problems and everything else on it. And if anybody, I know that people out there are probably in the same situation on it. Believe me, meeting other people in the same situation, in the same boat, as I
yes.
said, that was very, very beneficial to me.
That's what got you through, Pat.
That's what got me through, without a doubt on it.
I guess for a lot of people, grief, is a terrible thing, of course. And it's the taking that first step out the door to go to a meeting like that could completely change things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, just going back quickly on it. I was a pioneer when we got married. Even at our wedding, I should have mentioned this earlier. At our wedding reception, Olivia was drinking whiskey, wines and all that, and I was having my Coke. And we went off skiing. And the second week of the ski instructor said, "Come on, we'll go for a drink." And Olivia went back to the hotel to do her hair up because we were going to a dance in Innsbruck that night. And I went out with the ski instructor and 3 German girls that were on the class with us as well, ski class. And the ski instructor says to me, "Pat, what will you drink?" I said, "A Coke." No, he says, no, schnapps. So I never touched alcohol in my life. So he gets this little thing of schnapps and I take a sip of it. Oh, and it was awful. No, he says, "Bottoms up, Pat." So I bottoms up and each of us bought a round of this schnapps. And to this day, I cannot understand how the little barmaid, she came to me with my coat and she was walking at 45 degrees. And I couldn't understand how she was walking at 45 degrees with me. But went up the street, hands and knees, up into the room, knocked on the bedroom door, and there's my new wife with her hair all set to go to a dance night, and her husband coming in, puking up.
Who had never drank before.
Yeah, so I keep saying marriage drove me to drink.
It didn't take long.
No, but that's just a little story.
That's some story. She probably thought, "God, I'm after leaving this fella for half an hour to do me hair."
Yeah. So anyway, so that's life. No,
great story. Complain. Yeah.
So if anybody out there wants to hear a talk, I do very good talks with slideshows and lovely slides and all that on it.
Great, Pat, because I think there's a lot to learn from your story. Obviously, sailing around the world, not everyone does that, so that's a story in itself. But then losing your lovely Olivia and the period of grief and coming out the other side then with Geraldine now, and you're a happy man, you're living in Boyle, and that's proof that, you know, there is light at the end of the tunnel when sometimes you think there isn't.
Indeed. Yes.
So, Pat, the plans for the future. You're in Boyle, you have your boat docked there in the marina. What's your plan for the future with Geraldine? Have you any big plans?
Well, we've no big plans on it. The boat will be up and down. Next year we're planning on sailing on my boat up to Scotland for a couple of weeks. And then we want to take Geraldine's boat up through the locks to Lough Key, or not to Lough Erne, up into Lough Erne. And because I know Lough Erne very well as well from the sailing point of view on it. So, no, we're just going to enjoy ourselves as long as we can, as long as we have the health, and we have, right? We have a little Jack Russell dog called Layla. But please don't ask where she sleeps, okay? Right?
I would kind of want to ask now.
And we have a stray cat. Well, it's been stray for over 2 years. Could we knock the stray part of it off?
After 2 years, yes.
You could do that, right, yeah.
It's your cat. Whether you like it or not, it's your cat.
She's in the house all day, herself and the dog, and she sleeps out in the shed at night time on it. But no, it's can't complain now at the moment on it.
Good. So you're happy out.
Yeah, get my knee done now next month. So once I get over that, I'll be grand.
Great. And Pat, just to finish, I suppose, that's been a great chat. I think we got through a lot. Is there anything that I haven't asked or spoken about that you wish I had?
No, I think you covered it very well. The only thing, what am I in Boyle now? I'm a blow-in Boyle, but I like it. And tomorrow we're going to go to the Age Action Group to get involved with people in Boyle.
Fantastic.
Because I need to communicate with people and everything else. And we've a man next door to his wife's in a home. And we kind of communicate with him quite a bit too on it. You know, I don't want to mention where we are or anything else.
Yeah, no, that's okay.
Yeah. But,
so you're making an effort to get out there and meet the locals. Yeah, there's some great clubs going on, some great groups.
Oh, yes. And we'll get involved with the culture night now in the King House.
Yes, fantastic
Friday night now we'll be down there on it.
Well, we always welcome blow-ins, so don't feel like you're a blow-in at all. You know, you've been here 60s, 70s, 80s. You know, so you're not a blow-in really.
No.
Yeah. And obviously, Pat, given your story, is there any advice for people? Is there any advice you'd give to someone who might be thinking of doing a big adventure in their life, but there's fear of the unknown holding them back? Or do you have any advice for somebody that is going through a very tough period at the minute after losing their loved one?
Well, on the first part of it, anybody planning anything, do a lot of research, and there's a lot of people out there willing to help as much as possible as can. I've helped a lot of people. I brought them down, showed them the boat, showed them the equipment we have and everything else on it. And that's very important. And people, I didn't realise that. So there you are. And I think just don't be afraid to ask for advice from people on it. And as far as the other question about having gone through losing my good wife, Olivia, everybody's going to lose their partner at some stage or other on it. And you will go through a difficult time initially on it. There's no way you can avoid that, but you will come out the other end of it. And as I said, talking with other people, it pays to talk. And I did a lot of talking with other people on it, and it's paid off. I never thought, like 6 years ago, 6 years ago or so, just after Olivia died, that I'd be sitting here talking and in such good humour, spirits and that on it, right? And
a new love for life.
A new love for life, yeah.
That's great, Pat. Thank you so much. So I suppose that's it. I just want to say thank you so much for your time. Your story is one that I think our listeners will take some inspiration from. I've thoroughly enjoyed the chat, and I wish you all the best in your future adventures with Geraldine and your future adventures in Boyle.
Indeed. Thanks, Florence.
Thank you, Pat.
Loved the chat.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
And that's a wrap for today. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you enjoyed the episode. If so, we'd really love if you could share the podcast on social media. You can find us on Facebook by searching for Voices of Boyle. We'd also love to hear your feedback and suggestions, so feel free to reach out to us via our website at www.voicesofboyle.com. And finally, we're always looking for new guests, so feel free to drop us a message if you'd like to jump on and have a chat with us. Thanks again, and chat soon.